The Agile Practice Guide is broken down into chapters. And I want to give you some high level intro into these chapters. Okay, so let's talk about them one by one. The very first chapter is the introduction. And the intro is about why the practice guide. The answer is relevance. Relevance for the PMI and relevance for you, if you didn't already know. Agile is becoming more and more dominant in companies. So not paying attention to Agile, it's not really a good thing. You see, because on your exam, most students say the exam is anywhere from 50, we've heard all the way up to 90% Agile. See, so, and that's why it's relevant to you. It's relevant to you as a student, and it's of course relevant to the PMI because it's here to stay. And PMI jumped on the wagon a little bit late. The Agile Practice Guide came out in 2017. And by then, Agile already had 16 years on the PMI. See, so that's why. Let's talk about chapter 2. What is chapter 2 about in the Agile Practice Guide? Well, it's about understanding the difference between definable work versus high uncertainty work. You might remember in the Stacy complexity model, you have the X and the Y axis, and we show you requirement certainty versus technical certainty. We talk about the simple zone, and then we talk about the zone where you may have chaos and anarchy over here, and we talk about the complex zone, remember? This is really what chapter 2 goes into. And chapter 2 sensitizes you to what exactly Agile is. Agile and Kanban are looked at as subsets of Lean. And it goes into some more information to help you understand the manifesto, values, and principles. So that's chapter 2 in a nutshell. Let's talk about chapter 3. Chapter 3 is all about the life cycles. So for some of you who have already read this stuff, this is just going to be a nice reminder. When you take a look at chapter 3, you got to remember you have Agile, you have predictive, you have incremental, and you have iterative. Okay. These 4 can be categorized in different ways, but one of the ways is delivery, right? And this is frequent deliveries. Incremental is frequent, smaller deliveries. Predictive is one time, iterative is one time. And that's kind of the mantra that we talk about here in chapter 3. And it gets a little bit more elaborate, going into more and more details regarding these 4. In this chapter, we also begin to see the difference between flow-based Agile and iteration-based Agile. So just be on the lookout for those. Going into chapter 4 now. Chapter 4 is all about implementing Agile, and it's all about creating an Agile environment. So what do we talk about here? Agile mindset, and of course, servant leadership. We also talk about team composition, okay? And this is chapter 4. So some of the things you might hear mentioned here are things like Agile roles, the concept of generalizing specialists, team structures, team workspaces, things like the fishbowl window concept. If those sound foreign to you, it's probably a sign that you need to pick up your Agile Practice Guide, dust it, and read it. Let's talk about chapter 5. What is in chapter 5? Chapter 5 in the Agile Practice Guide is about 2 big things: the Agile Project Charter, the Team Charter, and it's also about Agile practices. And you do know that the PMI has their own slant to Agile practices. That's another chapter you need to look out for. Something else that's talked about in chapter 5 is the concept of Agile metrics. Burn up charts, burn down charts, feature charts, and things like that. All right, I hope you're getting the idea. Let's move to chapter 6. Chapter 6 of the Agile Practice Guide is called Organizational Considerations for Project Agility. So if your organization is looking to implement Agile, looking to transition to an Agile approach, some of these things can actually help you. First of all, the understanding of what exactly drives change management, what it is contingent on, and how it affects your Agile transformation. It's talked about there. We talk about change management drivers for change. What drives change? We talk about the readiness for change. We also talk about the culture of the organization. And then we talk about different aspects of contracts. Page 77 is one that you should take a look at to understand Agile type contracts. And then we also talk about the Agile PMO. Let's get this out of the way. The concept of the Agile Project Management Office and the fact that this is invitation oriented, it's multidisciplinary, and it's all about value. Value, value, value. All right, that's chapter 6, really, in a nutshell. So I'm hoping as I'm talking about these things, you are able to recall whether you've read this or not. All right, last but not least, we have chapter 7, and this is a call to action. Call to action. And the call to action is pretty much, do you have any feedback for the PMI? If so, they give you a link and they ask you to comment and to add some value to them. So I'm curious to know if you are studying the Agile Practice Guide, how much of it you have done, how much of it is left. And before we close, I want to show you how you need to think about a couple of things. All right, so let's go over the manifesto values in a different way. I want you to be able to marry the Agile Manifesto values to the content outline. So let me show you this. Here's the content outline. Are you able to marry the manifesto to the content outline? So which part of the manifesto will help you with task 1? Which part of the manifesto will help you with task 2? So we talk about team trust, give the team the environment and support they need, trust them to get the job done. That's just one example. There are many different aspects of the manifesto that you need to be able to marry back to, especially the people piece. And again, you should be able to do the same for the process piece. Can you marry the Agile Manifesto values and principles back to task 1? Execute the project with the urgency required to deliver business value. Can you do that? If the answer is no, let's do a few just to show you what I'm talking about. So let's go to the Agile Manifesto real quick. Okay. And let's actually go to where you can see it all at once. All right. So here we are. As far as task 1, manage conflict. This is definitely something to do with this. Build projects around motivated individuals. If you're in constant conflict, you're not going to be motivated, right? How best to solve conflict? as much as possible, face-to-face conversation. And even if you can't meet face-to-face, you have your cameras on, the fishbowl window concept, all that stuff. That's really what this is referring to. See? You get the idea? All right, let's go back to the content outline. All right, let's take a look at this one, assess and manage risks. Which one do you think that pertains to? Let's go back to the manifesto. So as far as risk is concerned, you want to think about this for sure. Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design. You want to think about breaking it down into smaller chunks, keeping it simple. And you also want to think about this. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective. This is a risk coping mechanism. This is a risk coping mechanism. Let's go back and let's fast forward towards the end. And let's just go to one. Let's go to 13. Determine appropriate project methodology, methods, and practices. So assess project needs, take a look at complexity, magnitude, and a bunch of other things. Well, my friend, if you go to the manifesto, which of these makes you see things that way? Well, I can tell you this, it's definitely more like value number 2, having a working product over comprehensive documentation. And it's also number 1 in the principles. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. Let's go back to the manifesto, mapping again to number 13 here. So determine appropriate project methodology, methods, and practices. All of this is tied in some way to satisfying the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable products. You can't do early and continuous if you're stuck in predictive, see. For that reason, you got to think about Agile. You got to think about the manifesto in this way, okay? There's the manifesto. So my advice to you, my friend, before you go into the exam, make sure you got a very firm grasp on the Agile Practice Guide. There's a lot of great stuff in it. This is one of the tables that maps the values of the Agile Manifesto, 2 sections in the Agile Practice Guide. And this is one that maps the principles, 2 sections of the Agile Practice Guide. So if you're not paying attention to these little nuances, I highly advise you to. Okay. I hope this has given you food for thought. I know a few folks might be struggling with the Agile piece. If that is you, if you are struggling with the Agile piece, you need to go on down to agileprinciple.com, right? On agileprinciple.com, you can actually sign up for a course that will take you through the entire Agile Practice Guide. Very good. So that's it for the Agile Practice Guide. High-level review. If you need a more detailed dive, join us as we journey through it. All right. Thank you very much, my friends. Always a pleasure to have you join me on these discussions for PMP exam. All right. And those of you who are getting ready for your ACP exam, don't forget, this stuff can benefit you as well. All right. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon.